Dino Crisis was launched as Capcom's dinosaur-themed survival horror hit. However, the series shifted direction with subsequent sequels and ultimately stalled, with the last Dino Crisis game released in 2003. Despite passionate fan demand and recent re-releases, a true revival remains uncertain due to industry shifts and internal decisions. So, let's dive into what killed this beloved series and see if there is any hope for fans wishing for a rebooted game. Before we go any further, I would like to ask everyone watching to like, share and comment on the video. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. With all that said, let's get started. Franchise origins and rise. The period from the late 90s to the 2000s was a glorious time for video games. The industry saw the influx of many genres of gaming that provided countless hours of entertainment to us. The Japanese gaming company Capcom hit a gold mine in the horror thriller series and was going from strength to strength with its survival thriller games like Resident Evil and Dino Crisis. Dino Crisis was the new and improved survival horror game that was meant to appeal to the side of the gaming community that preferred fighting dinosaurs to fighting zombies, because there's only two types of boys, them that like dinosaurs and them that like zombies. The game was created and directed by Shinji Mikami, the brain behind Resident Evil. Mikami wanted to incorporate real-world elements instead of the fantasy of zombies, because famously, dinosaurs walking amongst humans is so much more realistic than zombies walking the earth, right? The game follows a special ops team, SORT, that is sent to a remote island research facility to find and extract a rogue scientist named Kirk. They're expecting some serious human resistance, but what they find instead is way worse. The island is crawling with dinosaurs like T-Rexes and raptors. It's a real bloodbath, and the unit has to fight its way through this prehistoric nightmare while trying to figure out what happened and get out alive. The player takes on the role of Regina, a weapons specialist. The game featured real-time 3D environments as opposed to Resident Evil's pre-rendered backgrounds. Like its zombie-fighting counterpart, Dino Crisis was a smashing hit, selling over 2.4 million copies to date. The game was also a critical success, garnering generally positive reviews. Critics found that the game was a great mix of action and strategy, with dinosaur AI that keeps the action fresh. With the immense success of Dino Crisis, a sequel was all but inevitable. The following year, Capcom released Dino Crisis 2 for PlayStation. Shu Takumi took over as game director from Shinji Mikami, the director of the first game. However, fans were in for a bit of a strange ride, as the second game took a step back from its predecessor and gave up its unique 3D environments and used pre-rendered backgrounds. The developers added a lot of components that were previously scrapped from the original Dino Crisis. The game takes place a year after the events of the first Dino Crisis. This time, the player plays as either the returning Regina or a newly introduced character, Dylan Morton. The protagonists have to go back in time, to the time of the dinosaurs, to find survivors and data remnants. The game makes a stark shift from the thrilling horror genre that gained its popularity to a more sci-fi, action and adventure story. If previously it was criticised a bit harshly for being Resident Evil with dinosaurs, it was not escaping any of the allegations this time. The game, however, generally got favourable responses from the critics, who found the game to be an original, enjoyable experience. The inclusion of different dinosaurs apart from the usual Velociraptor and the T-Rex also contributed to the overall experience of the game. Like its predecessor, Dino Crisis 2 was a critical and commercial success, selling over 1.2 million copies worldwide. While it did sell fewer units than the original Dino Crisis, the developers' gamble to shift the genre certainly paid off. Things were seemingly going well, but in reality it was the beginning of the end of the series. Franchise decline, missteps and sequels. Enter Dino Stalker, the third installment of the series, which launched exclusively for PlayStation 2. This took the franchise in another direction, which was frankly something nobody had asked for. Dino Stalker was a light gun first-person shooter that had you play a World War II pilot who is transported back in time to the Cretaceous period and shoots dinosaurs with a special gun. The game was loosely connected to the events of Dino Crisis 2, but it changed the dynamics and the genre that had apparently been developed by the previous games all over again. The game unlocks a 2-player mode once you complete it. That's all there is to say about this lackluster sequel. It received mixed reviews and did not sell very well, given its changed genre and average reviews. You'd think Capcom would learn from this, but unfortunately, they just didn't. After Dino Stalker, a mobile first-person shooter game called Dino Crisis, Dungeon in Chaos was released in 2003. We don't talk much about that one. There was nothing much notable in the game except that it had a 3D maze that changed shape every game, so players could not figure out the location based on earlier playthroughs. It was a pretty average game. Anyway, in 2003, Capcom released what would be the final nail in the coffin of the Dino Crisis series. Dino Crisis 3 can be a thesis on how not to make a sequel. The game was released as an action-adventure game, just like Dino Crisis 2, with production led by Hiroyuki Kobayashi and Shinji Mikami returning to the franchise in the role of executive producer. The studio originally planned to make the game in the form of a human drama set in a facility that is in a city under siege from time-displaced dinosaurs. Crazy, right? Would love to be a fly on the wall for that idea being pitched. The game completely abandoned the previously set-up storyline with Regina and the time-travelling dinosaurs and turned into a futuristic adventure with jetpacks, androids, space guns, and weird mutant dinosaurs. This entire horror show is happening 300 years in the future, on board a colony ship called Ozymandias. The player mainly plays as Patrick, the game's protagonist. There is, however, a small portion of the game where they control Sonia, the supporting protagonist. The studio cranked the crazy up a notch and decided that Dino Crisis, the series that has been on PlayStation for the last 3 years, is now going to make its next sequel as an Xbox exclusive. Makes total sense, right? The reason given for this decision was that the Xbox console was judged to be better at rendering graphics than the PlayStation 2. The PlayStation version was scrapped early on in development. So much for consistency. The game was received poorly, and deservedly so. It alienated the PlayStation community by being an Xbox exclusive. The game was completely different from what it had started out as. And, to add insult to injury, the game's North American cover did not even feature any dinosaurs on it. The game's camera system was heavily criticised for its awkward movement, which caused a great deal of confusion to the player when using the fast-moving jetpacks. The lack of variety in the enemies was also a step back from the second game. Dino Crisis 3 failed to meet sales projections and can be safely assumed as a colossal failure. Since then, the studio has shuttered the entire franchise, and no new Dino Crisis game has been made to date. Attempts at revival and cancellations. The Dino Crisis series may have been discontinued, but the franchise has slowly built up a cult following that still wants more games. In 2014, there were rumours circulating that Capcom had begun development on Dino Crisis 4. In 2017, the official Twitter account for Capcom's lead development team responded to a fan asking if a new Dino Crisis title would be released soon, to which they replied, "If a lot of people wish." Given the success of the remake of its zombie siblings, Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3, fans of Dino Crisis are hopeful that Capcom considers their calls for either a remake or a reboot or a sequel to the Dino Crisis series. However, according to an insider, a Dino Crisis game was actually started a few years ago, but then scrapped and buried, and that the franchise is still extinct for the time being. So, where does the fandom go from here? Recent re-releases and fan movements. All hope may not be lost for Dino Crisis fans. Recently, the first game was re-released for PlayStation Plus Premium tier subscribers and made available for purchase on the PlayStation Store. Additionally, both the original Dino Crisis and Dino Crisis 2 were made available to purchase on GOG.com as part of GOG's ongoing preservation program. GOG, to their credit, has rebuilt the original game's source code from the ground up effectively creating the ultimate editions of these games. There have been multiple petitions on change.org and other platforms, some calling for a remake of the first two games and a new sequel, and others focusing on a full remake or reboot of the franchise in the style of the recent Resident Evil remakes, all aimed at convincing Capcom to revive the series. There have been some movements made by Capcom itself that have brought about new hope in Dino Crisis fans. On Capcom's website, something known as Capcom Super Elections was being held, which on the surface seemed like a fun, simple survey to interact with. But then question 5 asked, which franchise gamers want to see a new game in? To absolutely nobody's surprise, Dino Crisis won the first spot with over 17,000 more votes than second place. Surely Capcom took notice of that, right? Now, as reported by Virtual Gaming Chronicle, Capcom says that it is planning to revive more dormant IPs. Well, this particular IP that has been lying dormant encased in amber for the past is one that would generate the most buzz online should Capcom decide to revive it. Roadblocks, competition, and industry shifts. The problem with the revival of Dino Crisis is that it will require someone to find a particular direction and stick with it. Each of the 3 main installments was distinct from one another in terms of playstyle, environment, and genre. So clearly, nobody at Capcom had any structured plan for the series back then, and as evidence suggests, nobody has one now. According to another insider, Capcom Vancouver, the studio that developed all of the Dead Rising sequels, was working on a remake of Dino Crisis before the studio was closed. Even when Capcom publishes a game with dinosaurs, it's not actually the one fans really want. The studio launched Exoprimal as a multiplayer third-person shooter game in 2023, where a player is equipped with a futuristic exosuit and has to complete their objectives while fighting hordes of dinosaurs with the main goal of defeating a sinister artificial intelligence. It sounds kind of familiar, right? Well, this familiar-sounding game too received mixed or average reviews from critics and wasn't a big hit. Another question to consider is whether Capcom wants to deviate from something that is already working for them for something that hasn't done as well so far. The studio has been raking in better profits from the action role-playing department with its recent releases of the Monster Hunter series. The game follows the character completing quests that involve hunting weird dinosaur-looking monsters, among other creatures. The 2018 World and 2025 Wilds installments have raked in over 30 million copies together. You know the saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, currently, Capcom has been getting consistently positive reviews with the Monster Hunter series, and it doesn't make sense from a business point of view to dip into an extinct IP on the hopes that nostalgia will garner enough buys. The market saturation of survival horror and dinosaur games these days is another roadblock. There are way too many games available and upcoming where one has to kill dinosaurs while they try to eat them, such as Claude, Jurassic Park, Survival, Unknown Tapes, Deathground, just to name a few. A new Dino Crisis will find it very hard to corner the market, and that too is a risk that a studio may not want to take. Perhaps one of the most damning takes is from Shinji Mikami, the creator of Dino Crisis, who believes there isn't much room for a new game in the series due to the popularity of Monster Hunter and the different concept of other dinosaur-related games like Exoprimal. So should the fans just give up? Maybe not so soon. It has been revealed that Capcom recently applied for a new Dino Crisis trademark in early March, though it's not as much of a hooray as you would hope it to be. Dino Crisis has been getting renewed trademarks all the way since its inception in the 90s. Capcom last filed and was approved to renew the game's original 1999 trademark in 2021, and that renewal will last for another decade. So maybe there's something that Capcom might be planning something big, given all the murmurs about the revival of old IPs and the Capcom Super Elections results clearly showing that there is a demand for the game. It's not much, but in the darkest of nights, there is still hope, and hope is all we can do. Marvelous verdict. Dino Crisis was a game that could have been so much more than it turned out to be. It had all the elements required to make anyone fall in love with it. Thrill, scares, shooting, and most of all, dinosaurs. The main reason for this failure was the lack of a clear vision about what the game is all about. First, it was a horror game, then an action-adventure game, then a weird light gun game, and then a futuristic adventure game that was completely removed from everything that came before. This chopping and changing of genres, game styles, combined with the third game shifting to Xbox from PlayStation, really alienated the fans. The best thing for the series, by the state of things, would be a clean slate, a line drawn under all the 180s and all the shifting. A reboot of the game with today's graphics would be a powerhouse that will attract both the old fans and newer ones who enjoy the survival horror genre. Additionally, it requires a strong and clear vision of what it wants to be. And if it has any sequels, the vision should be kept intact. If the game does not have its fundamentals correct, then there really isn't any point in Capcom investing a whole lot of money and time making another lackluster dinosaur killing game. Frankly, I would rather have no more Dino Crisis than to have some remake or reboot, or even a sequel that still is not clear on what it actually wants to be. But that's just my take. What about you? What were your thoughts on the Dino Crisis series? Where do you think Capcom went wrong? Do you guys want a remake, a sequel, or just a clean slate reboot? Or do you think it's best to leave extinct dinosaurs lie and just not bother with a new Dino Crisis? Comment your thoughts down below. Well, that has been all for today. As always, please like, share, and comment on the video. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be the first to be notified of all things Marvelous videos. Goodbye!